10 years ago, the Wind Up Watch Fair began with a simple idea to bring watch lovers together in a fun, approachable setting to discover new brands and watches. A decade later, it has become the largest watch fair in the world, connecting enthusiasts, newcomers, and brands in a vibrant, community-focused setting. In celebration of our 10th anniversary, we are thrilled to announce the 2025 Wind Up Watch Fair schedule, with not 3, but 4 fairs planned across the country, including a brand new stop in Dallas, Texas. This milestone year promises to be our biggest and best yet. From exciting new partnerships to engaging experiences, 2025 is the perfect time to join us and commemorate a decade of the Wind Up Watch Fair. Join us in Dallas on Saturday, March 15th through Sunday, March 16th. In San Francisco from Friday, May 2nd to Sunday, May 4th. In Chicago from Friday, July 11th to Sunday, July 13th. And finally in New York City from Friday, October 17th to Sunday, October 19th. Head over to windupwatchfair.com to learn more about our 2025 fairs and enjoy the episode.
Hello and welcome to the Worn and Wound podcast. My name is Zach Kazan. I'm the managing editor at Worn and Wound. I'm joined today for another new episode by my colleagues Devin Pennypacker and Zach Weiss. Devin and Zach, how's it going?
Very good. Not bad. Not bad.
Good. Well, welcome to the podcast.
I had to work on the intro. I never know what to say.
No, that's okay. Listen, it's not natural. You know, like we don't. We don't live in a podcast. It's a strange thing. But listen, we made it through. We just did the intro. We can move on. We're doing we have a fun episode today, all about dive watches at different price points. We're going to be selecting dive watches under $5,000, between $5,000 and $15,000, and over $15,000. I didn't call this a draft when I asked you guys to do this, but it's basically a draft. So I think it'll be fun. Before we do that, before we get into the dive watches, we always do a wrist check. Devin, why don't you kick us off? What are you wearing today?
Yeah, I wore my favorite dive watch under $1,000, and that is the Seiko SRPL 13, the Red Samurai, which Zach Weiss called out as being the best sub-$1,000 finished Seiko available on the market today.
I did.
Yeah, I just think I have this recorded somewhere.
Maybe we do live in a podcast. Everything's being recorded.
I don't know. I say all sorts of stuff, but maybe it's true. I just don't remember. So
it's fantastic. Take his word for it.
Yeah, Samurai is a really good kind of like, like less heralded Seiko dive watch. You wrote a really nice piece, Devin, about the Samurai a few months back. We'll link to that in the show notes. I think we can take care of that. Samurai is a good piece. And it's under $1,000. It's also under $5,000. It could be a pick.
It's not, but it could be.
Yeah. Zach, how about you? What are you wearing today?
I was going to wear something more exciting, dig through my archives a bit. I was actually going for a Seiko diver, but then when I put them on, I was like, I had them on the worst straps, and I was like, I don't think I'm able to sit there and actually, do this comfortably. So I went for another relevant but obvious watch, Black Bay 54.
Yeah, another diver. I have a feeling Tudor and or Black Bays might be part of the discussion today as we're talking about dive watches and kind of like that Tudor sweet spot. Black Bay 54 is a great watch. I'm not wearing a dive watch at all. I'm wearing the James Lamb Origin series. This watch should not go near water. It has a silver case, really like much more of a dress watch. But I hadn't worn it in a while and thought I'd wear it today. This might be a watch. Do you guys have watches that like you really love and would never like get rid of, but you just find that you just don't wear a lot? Like,
yeah,
I think everyone probably has that experience. Like, I love this watch. I would never part with it. I think it's incredibly beautiful, but I don't often find myself reaching for it. It's really just more of like something I want to experience, like, like once a month or so. Maybe.
It's a piece of art.
Yeah.
I'm starting to try and get over that feeling because of the value of some of those watches. And I'm like, maybe it's time. But I know the feeling very well. I have several watches with that feeling sitting there right now.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And I understand the value. Like for me, that doesn't even like enter into the equation though. Cause like I see this watch as something that I'll just like have forever. So it's not,
well, I'm just thinking about what other watches I want to buy. And,
yeah.
You know how it is. It's just part of the sickness.
The constant struggle. Before we, thank you guys for the wrist check. That's always appreciated, of course. Just a couple of news items from the week that I thought maybe we could discuss before we get into the dive watch conversation. Rolex and Rolex made an announcement about the Bucherer brand this week that I think, in hindsight was not completely unexpected. It was still, made pretty major news. Essentially, Rolex is shuttering the Bucherer, the Carl Bucherer watch brand, which has existed for quite a long time. And when Rolex absorbed Bucherer, I think it was kind of speculated that this might happen. Do you guys have any immediate reactions to the Rolex Bucherer news this week?
I actually did a little segment on this in A Week in Watches, and we put that out as a podcast. So forgive me if this gets redundant, but I happen to have learned more about the Carl F. Bucherer brand in the last few days than I ever knew. Yeah. My immediate reaction as a collector is, oh well, they're not a brand. I don't mean to be rude to them. They seem to make really nice watches actually, and the value of them, I think I didn't realize until I was really digging in. The peripheral rotor automatics at around 7K, and then gold at 15K. If you start price comparing the category, they actually offered a really decent value. They just never caught on with the audience, and at least in the the 14 years of doing this in the kind of collector boom sort of thing, at least in the US. So it wasn't surprising that a brand we never talk about gets closed. What I did find surprising is that it was a continuously family-owned company from 1888 or something like that, and then within a year and a half, it got shut down, which is kind of a brutal end, and swift. So it made me realize kind of how unusual it is in this climate for a brand to actually just cease existing. We see a lot of brands kind of they change ownership hands and they get rebranded and relaunched, but for a brand to just shutter like that is actually somewhat unusual. And they did make some cool stuff. The peripheral rotor stuff in particular I thought was always really really interesting, but and very common. The thing I'm kind of interested if there's any any more of the story or any future to is based on their manufacturing capabilities, because and how that would play into any kind of Rolex plans for the future, because obviously Rolex has their own and has a very specific way of doing things. But once again, a thing I learned this week, but the Carl F. Bucherer's movement came from THA. So they bought THA, which was the complication house found by Vianney Halter, F.P. Jorn, and Dennis Flagiole from De Bethune.
Yes.
I've just literally don't know.
I think you mostly got that. Yeah. Flagiole, I think, is how an American can exactly pronounce it.
I took Spanish for 4 years. I don't know the French. And that's a powerhouse kind of a thing. It's kind of interesting that went from where, doing its thing into the world of Carl F. Bucherer and now is part of Rolex in some way, shape, or form. I wonder if they'll just sell it off or what,
See, I don't think so. I don't think this is the last we're going to see of the brand. I think that they might just be this swift and abrupt ending to the brand. I think might just be lining it up for a rebirth down the line. We might see, I don't know, maybe the brand comes back, maybe they rebrand it as something else. I'm not entirely sure, but I don't think they're just going to kill it and move on after having it for such a short period of time. It's a brand that didn't really connect with a lot of us out there, and one that in hindsight, a lot of us are looking at going, wow, look at the value. But while it was operating, we weren't paying attention to it. So clearly there was a lot of things going wrong, and hopefully they can right the ship and bring it back, or just spin it off into something better than it was before.
Do you think there's any chance, Zach, that when we head to Watches and Wonders in a couple of weeks, I guess, the Rolex booth will have a little Bucherer corner? Just be surprise, Bucherer is here.
I mean, There's been crazier. Yeah, no. Or maybe there'll just be a little tombstone or something you can pay your respects at.
R.I.P. Bucherer.
But not
another interesting
stores, which is also part of the confusing thing, because
it's all
stores are still there and seem to be doing just fine.
And new collaborations too.
Yeah. And that's actually part of what was weird about that brand. And maybe this is part of the reason why they're doing it, is that they felt like a disconnect, because Bucherer, the store, clearly was a multi-brand AD and had to put a lot of energy behind all these other companies. They barely seem to put any energy behind Karl F. Bucherer.
Yeah.
So maybe by rebranding it, like you're saying, they can do more with it.
Yeah. The other interesting news story this week was Breitling's acquisition of the Gallet. I don't know. Gallet. Yeah, thank you. Again, stupid American can't pronounce
that one. I feel like I've heard enough times that I'm confident.
Yeah.
I'm fairly confident. It's not like Gillette. It's Gallet.
Yeah. Anyway, Breitling acquired the Gallet brand, the rights to the Gallet name this week. So they've now they got their own little group happening there. George Kern has acquired Gallet and also Universal Genève. Pretty interesting move, I think. This is it's been widely speculated that this is something that Kern has been kind of like moving towards for a while, at least since the purchase of Universal Genève. I don't know. You guys have any immediate thoughts on this? I think it's kind of I think it's interesting. I'm open-minded and curious to see what they do with those watches. Most famous for their chronographs, of course. Gallet historically.
I mean, I think I'd be more interested if we saw Universal Genève do something first. We're seeing them acquire another name from history, and they really haven't done much with the first one that they acquired. So if this move had come a couple years after a new model collection had come out, I'd be interested. But for now, it's just, I don't know, it just feels like they're trying to put some more names under their belt rather than actually focusing on what they're going to turn them into. I hope I'm wrong. I hope they're not just, acquiring IP like a lot of other companies do, but it feels that way to me right now.
Yeah, certainly could be. I think it takes a while to, to get for them to wrap their arms around a, brand like this. And I have a sense that they want to, they have like big plans for Universal Genève. It seems like they've, really put quite a bit of thought into it, at least from the reporting we've seen. They'll probably be pretty high-end watches. So I think there's they had always kind of anticipated a longer timeline for that. But you're right, it is a little bit strange to see like another brand kind of like come under their wing, before we really see anything substantive from Universal Genève. Zach,
I don't think they're going. I don't think they're going to move on it as fast. I think it's more of just the IP announcement. When they acquired Universal Genève, I feel like I had more feelings about it because that's a brand I was more fond of, and I think the collectors have been more fond of in recent years. Not that Gallet doesn't have its fans. So there's more kind of baked into what we want to see from Universal Genève. But if they came out with a $15,000 Gallet chronograph, I'd be like, sure, that maybe, it's very much more open book to me as to what they can do with it. $15,000 is probably actually the low end of what they're coming out with. Let's be honest. But Gallet is an interesting brand, though. I think they're one of the oldest brand names. I vaguely recall that. So they used to have a booth in Basel, and it was very weird. We'd go in, we'd talk to them. It was very hard to get a sense of what they were doing. They had in-house movements. They had all these old watches around, but nobody talked about them. And it was very hard to get a sense of who was really operating it at the time. But it was always fun because they had these really cool watches. And then it just disappeared again. They also have an interesting relationship with Marathon that I don't want to get wrong, but I believe there was a distribution sort of situation there and stuff like that. So they made military watches. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of different places they can go with it. So cool that it might be coming back. Well, we'll see. I have a feeling that's a ways out.
Yeah, no, for sure. I just think it's interesting that George Kern continues to kind of make moves like this. I hear Bucherer is available if he wants to add another brand real quick.
We'll see. For the movements, I'm telling you, that. They could use some thinner movements, right?
Peripheral rotor, Universal Genève.
The micro rotor was the past. The peripheral is the future.
Hey, stranger things have happened. All right. Let's get into the main topic. Dive watches at 3 different price points. So I asked you guys to come up with your favorite dive watches under 5,000, between 5,000 and 15,000, and then over 15,000. No real restrictions beyond price. We won't make overlapping picks, so this kind of like feels like a draft a little bit to me. And then we'll talk about our honorable mentions, watches that didn't quite reach the top of our list after we've all made our selections and discussed them. Under 5K, Devin, you want to go first? What's your pick for the most value oriented diver here?
That's so much pressure. Under 5K is a hard price point, right? Because with the recent price increases, we've seen certain picks. Like normally my pick would be the Pelagos, right? Mm-hmm. But now it's at $5,200. So we can't count that. The Seamaster Professional used to be right around that price point. Now it's pushing north closer to $6,000. So I'm going to go with, I have 3 on my list that I was kind of expecting you both to take 2 of the 3, and then I would take the third one.
I'm getting nervous.
I know. I'll pull a flyer here and just stay away from Tudor, and I'm going to go with the Longines Hydro Conquest GMT. It's under $3,000. Solid watch. Great bracelet, on the fly adjustment, beautiful bezel action, a GMT complication. It's not the in-house technically, but it's like the in-house collaboration with ETA for the movement. So you're getting the over 70 hours of power reserve, just solid construction for under $3,000. And now I have an extra $2,000 to play with. So I'll pick that one.
Yeah, that's a really good pick. Longines makes a really nice watch. So, it's hard to fault a pick like that. I think that's a good, solid, kind of like mid-range dive watch that's a little bit like under the radar. It's not like the obvious pick. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's hopefully they take, because it's kind of a revamp to the Hydro Conquest line. Hopefully they take that and put it into the standard Hydro Conquest lineup. But for now, I'll take the GMT as an added bonus.
Yeah. I like a bonus GMT on a dive watch. That's always nice. Do you have a color preference that you?
No, so they all, I'll go blue just because they all have like a slight quirk in color. They have like a slight accenting color on each one of them. And on the bracelet too, I'll be specific because the nylon strap that they come with is not very good. The rubber is great, but the nylon is terrible. So I'll take the blue because it has the least offensive accent. The black is also nice with that little bit of orange. But yeah, I don't think you can go wrong. It just kind of depends on which pop of color you're looking for.
There's a brown one too, right?
Yeah, there's a green and a brown.
Yeah,
and I'm not a big fan of those
brown,
two.
Yeah, I remember when I saw Ricardo's brown Hydro Conquest for the first time. I don't know if he still has it, but I remember being like just very impressed with like the level of finishing and the quality of it. And it was also like I like a brown dial, but they're like very rare and like even rarer to be like very well executed. And I thought the dial on that particular Longines was very nice, very nicely done. So
especially with a matching ceramic bezel.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
It just every bit of it feels high quality.
Yeah, excellent pick.
Thanks,
Zach. What's your 5K or under pick?
Yeah.
And did you have like a strategy for this? Because last time we did this, you notably had or something similar to this. You really thought everything through to a.
I mean, I had even less time for this one because I found out about this like last evening that I was potentially going to be doing this, so I didn't think about it again until this morning. So my strategy was just trying to remember as many dive watches as I could, and that particularly got a little tricky with the other price points, but. I have a hot take. I don't know if I should. I'm gonna make a hot take right now.
Sure.
Because when you start doing this and really digging through, looking at these different price points, I think I personally have come to the realization that there almost doesn't need to be dive watches over 5K. That it's almost a ridiculous concept because everything and more that you'd ever want in like a real dive watch can be had under 5K. Once you're going over that, you're just getting into extras and luxury and everything else, So that was my realization. I was kind of like, especially I was like, what are these? Like, I'm like trying to find a 12K watch or something like, and the choices just get silly, sort of. So anyway, but I don't know if you guys agree, but it's so like you could almost like the challenge like under 1, is, and then 1 to 3 and then 3 to 5. Like there's so much in there.
Yeah. So I don't disagree at all. I think the what you just said is reflected in my like higher priced watches, which are like real, like I think like pretty unique.
I bet we'll have some overlap there.
Yeah. I imagine like there's only so many like really interesting dive watches that you can talk about that are like at that like higher price point. So the higher range will be more just more interesting. But I don't disagree. I think that like there's so many great dive watches that are affordable, because that's like for such a long time now, that's what enthusiasts have like been, and all watch consumers have been demanding, is these like affordable kind of go anywhere, do anything sports watches. And so brands have just gotten really good at making affordable divers.
Yeah. So with that premise, I watched this. I reviewed it last year, and it stuck with me, and it's a watch I think about from time to time. The Christopher Ward C60 Trident Lumiere.
Mm-hmm.
Good pick.
I think they just knocked it out of the park with that watch for like a dive watch. That's a dive watch with good dive watchy features. You know what I mean? It's titanium, a lot of lume, there's no date. It's a chronometer. It was just it was super well executed. So and it's right in the middle. It's 2,400, call it.
Yeah.
So
No, that's a really good pick. That watch is it's in my notes here. It was on my on the long list of watches to kind of like choose from. I was like you, like very impressed with that piece when I saw it last year. Just as we talked about and have discussed on the podcast before, it's just like a really good example of like kind of Christopher Ward's increasingly like excellent manufacturing capability. Like just every component is just like very nicely executed, particularly like the dial and the loomed components, I think just look great. So for $2,500, that's a pretty tough to beat watch, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, excellent choice. All right, so for my under 5K pick, I'm inspired by a piece that we ran on Worn and Wound today as we record, and I'm going to pick the Vertex Aqualion No Date watch that Griffin, our contributor, reviewed, and very convincingly reviewed. I thought he wrote a really nice review, and there's a nice video accompanying it.
You chose it.
Yeah, it's like it's a watch that I honestly like don't really think about too much unless I'm talking to Griffin or unless he's posting it on Instagram or whatever. But every time I do consider it, I'm reminded that it's just like a really solid dive watch. And I think it's around $3,500 or so. It's an interesting brand, like heritage brand, kind of like brought back by a member of the family who owned it originally. And like the watch is just like super solid. We'll link to Griffin's review, obviously, but like I think the main thrust of his review is that like all the details are just really nicely done. It's incredibly like high quality for the money. It's easy to wear. It has lots of great little details, like the multiple lug holes to mount a strap at different points to kind of change the fit, accommodate different types of straps. Just like a really smart thing. I remember from the times I've handled this watch in the past, it has like an incredibly good bezel action, which is just like a satisfying thing, and I think is kind of like shorthand for just like a watch that's made with like a really really high quality excellent manufacturing standards. So I also tried to stick with like independent brands as much as I could. Vertex is obviously a small brand. I don't know if it's fair to call them, I wouldn't consider them a micro brand just because they have like a lengthy history, but they operate on a small scale, obviously, and make a very good product at a very I think fair price point. So yeah, the Vertex Aqualion No Date is my under 5K pick. But probably only because Zach chose the Christopher Ward. So,
oh, really? That was
yeah.
Okay.
There you go. Yeah.
So you guys would not have picked the other two on my list because they were both from Tudor.
Well, we'll have it. I think an extended discussion of the watches that we didn't choose. I got a bunch of watches written down that we are kind of like in the honorable mention category. But
Zach made reference to that other podcast I was on. And I tried not to pick the exact same things, just so you don't have to hear me say the same thing twice to your listeners. So,
all right, next price point, $5K to $15K. This covers a lot of ground, obviously. Devin, what have you got for your $5K to $15K?
So I'm gonna burn one of the honorable mentions here because I picked it as my watch. I think it was like one of my favorite watches in a recent podcast we did. I talked about the Glashütte Original CQ Panorama Date, specifically in green on bracelet. So I don't want to pick that again. I'm going to go ahead and pick the Omega Seamaster Planet Ocean Ultra Deep in the summer blue color. That dial is pretty awesome, very fun, has that hidden message on there with the UV light. The bracelet and buckle are just like incredibly well machined. Everything about that case feels high quality and just finished higher than it probably should be. And weirdly, even though it's gigantic, it wears better than you're going to expect it to wear. And I really, really loved hanging out with that piece. I had it in about a year ago for a review that I wrote up and really just loved wearing it. And just every time I looked at it, I was just kind of drawn into the waves on the dial. It's a very cool piece.
The Ultra Deep is a fun watch. It's ridiculously big, but it has like ridiculously cool specs too. Obviously, it's a incredibly deep. What is the actual like water resistance number on that?
Let me pull it up here.
It says 6K.
6,000. Yeah.
That's pretty good.
It is cool. And just the pale blue accents are great. The black indices and black hands, like it looks really cool. It's a really cool piece.
Yeah. And that one has the darkest of the gradient blue dials in that collection. Am I right? Because the conceit of that Seamaster collection was all the different watches in the Seamaster line with blue gradient dials that get darker as the depth ratings get higher. So
pretty cool collection. Some in that collection were better than others, but this one still just stands out to me. And honestly, too, the other Ultra Deeps that are out there, I'm not a huge fan of. I think they're fine, but design language just doesn't really speak to me. But the Summer Blue, for whatever reason, just really stands out. And every time I look at it, I just kind of get pulled into all of the weird facets that Omega puts on this case that they just don't put on other cases.
Yeah. Would you consider yourself a Seamaster guy? I mean, you own a Seamaster, obviously. So this kind of...
No, because I'm going to put this out there and make some people angry here. The Seamaster Professional 300, that bezel sucks. It has great action, but like if it gets wet, it's really hard to manipulate. And, your hands just kind of bounce off of the scallops. So as much as I love the collection, I just wish it did more. And annoyingly, yes, I own one and I absolutely love it. And I'm going to own more and I love those too. And if I ever find that vertically brushed silver dial Seamaster, I'll probably have that as well. But I can't commit to the entire collection.
Yeah, the Seamaster Professional, the current Seamaster Professional with that scallop bezel, like you have to grip it in a very like specific way, like kind of from the side.
You put your palm on top and just smear your hand across the crystal.
Yeah, not appealing. It is a little, it's a little bit tough to handle. I like the value proposition of those watches. I think for as a recommendation to someone who like wants a nice watch that's like available, they don't have to like get on a wait list for. I think the Seamaster Professional is like a good solid watch that most people will like be pretty satisfied with and enjoy. But there's like little things like the bezel that I think kind of keep it at the arm's length of some enthusiasts, maybe. But that's not who Omega's making watches for, as we know. No. They're a pretty big watch brand, I think. They're a
little bit. Yeah, they like to play the underdog, but
yeah, not really. Okay, Zach, what's your 5 to 15K pick?
I think for me this was maybe the hardest section, because I found I wasn't really that into it. Like the watches that were in there, they felt like the value, like I actually was looking at the Omega that you just chose because of the 6,000 meters. It's like that sort of justifies this increase in price to me, you know? So I have a few here now. I don't know which one to pick. Okay, I'll just pick this one because why not? Grand Seiko Evolution 9 SLGA 015.
There you go.
So that has the 5-day spring drive movement in it. The 9RA5 has a very cool black wave dial that I remember being quite taken with when I saw it in person. The first time we saw it in Geneva. It's a largish watch, 43, I think. It has a 23 millimeter lug width, which that is not cool. But it is high intensity titanium. And I think the idea of like a spring drive diver is cool. It's, you know, the most accurate watch that I chose, that I have on my list, period. So, you know, there's, I think, something to be said for accuracy in a performance watch. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, this was tough. I have some other options. There was a Tudor there, but like you said, it's more because the price increase that it's there than it was that, you know. So once you said that, it's kind of like, ugh, now I don't feel like picking it anymore. You know,
good. I'm glad I've ruined your pick.
Yeah.
This is the magic of a draft where things get nasty. Yeah, I love it.
And then I have one I feel like you might pick, Zach, so I don't want to step on your toes. And then I have one that I'll talk about later.
I have a feeling my 5 to 15K pick, no one thought of because it's cheating, and I'm picking a watch that is not in production. So sorry, but I want to like just quickly go back to the Grand Seiko. I think that I like that Grand Seiko diver quite a bit. I think that there's just like conventional wisdom or like commonly held sentiment that like Grand Seiko needs a Submariner competitor, just like a basic kind of like luxury dive watch. And this watch doesn't really feel like that to me, just because it's a little bit more special. I'm curious, like, do you agree with that? Like, do you think they need like that sort of like killer, like everyday generic, for lack of a better term, diver?
I don't think Grand Seiko even needs a sports watch, period. Yeah. You know, they make very capable everyday watches, and they're really good at that are finished incredibly and have amazing movements in them. Like, you know, honestly, like I'd rather go for a Prospect LX sort of like Marine Master if I'm going to look into getting like a Seiko brand performance diver kind of a thing. So no, I don't think so. Plus, I don't know, like when you're talking about like a sub competitor, I feel like then people imagine it has to sort of be like a sub,
right?
And like it's Grand Seiko, like they shouldn't be like a European brand, you know?
Yeah,
I don't think they need to put a sub like watch in their collection, but we all want it. Like if this watch, this is 44 millimeters in diameter. If they were to like thin down the hand slightly and make it 40, this watch would kill. It would be awesome. Sure, it wouldn't be as like ridiculous, and it would lose a little bit of that Grand Seiko, I don't know, ethos of just being a little bit extra. But I would love it. I would absolutely love it. I like their sport watches a lot, but I do find that they all wear just a little bit too big, and they have like a chunky aesthetic that I don't necessarily connect with. So if they could just bring the proportions down slightly, I'd be all in.
They have some very strange rules when it comes to like their dive watch in particular, and I feel like Joe Kirk has told them to us a few times, but like they refuse because of the fragility of it to go below this size and this width and whatever, and it's just like, so yeah, they won't do that until something changes. And yeah, it is crazy a little bit. I also want just a wearable chronograph from them at some point in my life.
Yeah.
But hey,
the Tentograph, do you find the Tentograph to be a little ungainly?
A little ungainly. I also, that one, because of the placement of the subdials, I feel like it just needs to be shrunken down a bit. It's all very centered. Bothers me.
Yeah.
But
it's a fair
I would love like the spring drive chronographs in particular is what I would like,
Mm-hmm.
even though they're really weird with the way those are arranged. But you know, they're huge. They're absolutely gigantic.
Yep.
All of them.
Yep. I'm very much looking forward to seeing what Grand Seiko has in store for Watches and Wonders this year. They had a really good year of releases. I think like a bright spot at Watches and Wonders, frankly, last year. Very excited to see what they show us very soon in Geneva. I That's a good pick. I like that you chose that Grand Seiko Diver. That's a cool watch. All right, my pick again. I'm cheating a little bit here. I'm doing it for the podcast because I want to just talk about this watch and get your reactions to it. So my pick is a watch that commonly sells for like right around $5,000 on the pre-owned market. It's no longer in production. It's the Pita Barcelona Oceana. Zach's laughing because he's familiar with this watch. Devin, do you know this watch?
Yeah, you were talking about it in the office, I think, a little bit ago.
Was I? I am so. Kind of like I am kind of like low key obsessed with this watch. I think it's like incredibly cool. This is a 5,000 meter dive watch, so not quite as deep as your ultra deep, Devin, but this watch has no holes. That's sort of the
only selling feature of this watch.
It has no holes and no gaskets. The time is set via like a magnet, basically, like on the back of the case. I believe it's a big, like funky, like oversized dive watch. Independent brand and like completely kind of like designed from scratch, I understand, by the Pita brand, which I have to admit, I'm not sure if they still exist. They were kind of like a early era, kind of like independent, like darling of sorts. But this is probably their most famous watch. Just some quick stats for you. The crystal is 9.8 millimeters thick. It's a polycarbonate crystal, which they describe as being nearly unbreakable. Like I said, water resistant to 5,000 meters, no holes, no gaskets, 43 millimeters in diameter. Thickness, including the crystal, is a modest 21.6 millimeters. And it's 54 millimeters lead to lug. So you don't get a compact watch when you get a 5,000 meter dive watch with again, no holes, no gaskets. But it's pretty distinctive, and it's an indie brand, and that's my pick for $5,000 to $15,000 if you can find one.
Oh, I found one here for $3,500. So you're breaking your own pricing bracket.
Can you send me that link? Because I might.
I mean, the price per meter there is fantastic.
That's very good.
I pulled up their Instagram too, and the last thing they posted was in 2019, and it's a bad wrist shot in front of a television of the Liverpool-Barcelona game. So I don't think that this brand is still operational.
They might be defunct. It turns out. But
top comment: the Pita Barcelona website is broken.
that's a shame. I wonder what happens if the watch breaks. I wonder if anyone is capable of fixing it.
Actually, well, here's a plot twist for you. The website's actually for sale, which you might be able to get for betwing $5,000 and $15,000. So instead of the watch, you could buy the whole brand for the price bracket.
Fascinating turn of events. I've never actually seen one of these in person. I've just sort of like read a little bit about them and studied them over the years. Zach, have you ever come across this watch like in the metal at any point? Do you have thoughts on the Pita Barcelona Oceana?
I mean, just that is not something I expected to be brought up today. I haven't even thought about that brand in a long time. So I'm just a little in awe. I don't think I quite knew about its lack of holes and gaskets so much. I think they made
fame. It's
what other watches did Pita make? I feel like there was some other one that I was more familiar with, but maybe not. Yeah, they had some weird. They had weird watches.
Yeah, one that I remember is the Roadster. I had to look up that name, but it was like their kind of driving inspired watch, and it kind of had like a weird slanted display to it. That's the one I remember seeing pop up once in a while.
Oh, I don't think I'm familiar with that, but that sounds like a thing that exists for sure.
It's so weird.
Anyway, if anyone has, thank you. I mean, I feel like that's a choice you make for the podcast. I think it is a watch that I've been interested in for a long time. I may have had a watch recon alert for this set at one point. If any listeners own a Pita Barcelona Oceana, I'd love to hear from you. Tell me about your experience owning it. It's a watch I've been fascinated by for quite some time. Okay, so that takes us through, I think, maybe the most challenging price bracket, that $5,000 to $15,000 price bracket. All that's left is just kind of like losing all inhibitions above $15,000. So let's really let's really see where we can go with our most expensive category. Devin, why don't you kick us off? What's your $15K plus?
Yeah,
I think I know.
Well, probably. This is a bad price category, in my opinion, because there's really the options thin out dramatically, unless you just want something that's ridiculous.
Yeah, well, they're all. I mean, that's the thing. Is this should be ridiculous. Whatever watch we pick in this.
But there are some in this category too that they call divers that only have 100 meters of water resistance. I won't call out exactly what.
I think I know which brand that was. Might have come across them too.
Yeah, there are some that just kind of drove me nuts. But I thought, we're gonna go crazy. I'm gonna go Blancpain because you have to.
Okay.
But I'm gonna take it the Automatique 42.5 millimeter in the rose gold case.
Thank you for picking gold. I think that's the right move.
I had to
for sure.
That watch is beautiful. The rotor in gold is also gorgeous. It just had such a warm glow when I had it for a little bit, and I don't know. That was just such a cool piece to wear for a week, and at just under $35K, really a bargain.
They do value great. I mean, it's just
yeah.
Did you picked all Swatch Group watches, I think, Devin, if I'm not.
Oh crap, I did.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh man,
I'm not calling you a shill.
Are you getting
Swatch
paid,
Devin? I'm not.
I wish. Are you kidding?
I swear to God about it.
Look out for the new Swatch Devin plastic collaboration in the future.
That's a good choice. I think that's a very Devin choice.
But what's really funny too is those three watches are the only Swatch Group watches on my list too, and I just happen to choose all of them as my top. Well, it turns out Swatch just knows how to make a good diver
at every price point.
At every price bracket, they'll walk you up the ladder and then push you off the ledge.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, that's a good choice. I'm not personally a big. I'm not a 50 Fathoms guy. I've never been. A Blancpain guy, but I do have a certain amount of respect for them, and I know that it's a watch that you admire quite a bit. I had a feeling you might go 50 Fathoms at one point.
The ethos. They're the ethos behind the brand too. They're just kind of, I guess, uncompromising. They have a vision. They know what they want to produce. They know how they want to sell it. They know how they want to market it, and they don't care what anyone thinks about it. So, as annoying as that is, as an enthusiast, we usually complain about that. I do appreciate it from time to time, and they're just solid watches. You put them on, and you can feel the quality, even if you don't agree with the price point or you hate the engraving on the side of the case, which a lot of people do.
I always forget about that. Yeah,
it's a good thing to forget about, unfortunately. But a solid watch nonetheless.
Yeah. All right, excellent. All right, Zach, pick the watch. Break my heart. Pick the watch that I've been waiting to draft here.
The Ressens Type 5.
Ooh, not the watch.
Really?
No, but that's a great pick. To speak of on the Ressens, it's a very good choice.
So I mean, I got into this price point. I was like, what is here? And kind of I went through circles, and then it somehow popped into my head. It's like, oh my God, finally a place where I could talk about the Ressens Type 5, and it fits. It makes sense, right? Because it's a $34,000 watch, $34,500. It's the Type 5. It's their dive-ish watch. It might be 100 meters. Also, I'm not sure. They don't. None of their watches are particularly water resistant, except for this one. But hey, it qualifies as you can swim with it, so I'll do it. Oil filled. Which is, part of the magic of this. Yes, you could get a Sin U50 Hydro, but it's a sort of a very different effect with the Ressens case because it just makes that crazy dial feel like it's literally against the surface of the crystal. And the oil changes the angle at which, if you look at it from an oblique angle, it still sort of projects out. So it's just like a fascinating object sort of to behold. This one is fully, it's a full lume dial, but it's all gray, which is neat, but still glows really well. And I mean, it's an absurd price point, so pick an absurd watch.
Yeah. I'm very fond of that. But really, every Ressens, I think, is has a ton of charm, and one of my favorite indie brands. But something about that oil filled case is just incredibly cool. It looks in person, it looks ethereal. Like it doesn't look real, you know? So yeah, that's a great pick. All right. My pick, I only have a couple of watches on my in this category written down. One is like kind of like very much against type. I'll save it for the honorable mentions conversation. The other was like the first thing I thought of as like a kind of like a super diver. I'm going with the Singer Reimagined Dive Track 24.
No, that was my honorable mention.
Yeah, I was debating it. That was the other one. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is just like a wild watch. This is $98,000, so it's obviously like it's well above our meager $15,000 price point. It's just peanuts when in the grand scheme of things. But this is so like I'll preface this by saying like, I haven't been like a huge fan of like the Singer chronographs like to this point. I admire them. I think that they're interesting, but they don't like appeal to me like aesthetically really. But the diver is different. Like this is like a it looks different than the chronographs. It has like a very different kind of like case design I think, and like it just presents differently. But I really like how Singer kind of like reinterpreted like what the needs of a diver are for this watch. It's a 24-hour chronograph, and it's really meant as much for like surface like level activities to track intervals on the surface, like how the period of time you have to wait until you like board a plane, for example, after a dive, as much as it is for timing a dive. It sort of like does it all. Very cool Augengraph movement, obviously like very novel kind of chronograph design, and it's just like a wild like crazy thing that is there's literally nothing else quite like it, and very imaginative and creative. So yeah, Singer Reimagined Dive Track 24-hour chronograph would be my like well over 15K.
Your dream pick, you might say.
Yeah, I mean, if I had, an unlimited amount of money and you told me I had to buy like a very expensive diver, like this is the one I'd get. Or maybe that Resonance. I don't know. Like they're both pretty compelling.
This one's also huge.
It's enormous. Yeah.
It's enormous.
I have the specs here. It's so it's titanium. It's titanium case, but it's 49 millimeters. And
a wearable 49 millimeters.
Yeah. 19.6 millimeters tall. It's 300 meters water resistant. So it's got a ways to go to match the Pita Oceana and your Ultra Deep. But this one, this case has holes and gaskets, unlike the Pita. So it's not going to go quite as deep.
Ironically, this also, it would be a good pairing with your Mad 1S.
Yeah,
you have to tell the time from the side on this one too.
Yep. I think that's probably yeah. I think it's a natural pairing. Honestly, I'd be surprised if most Mad 1S owners don't eventually own the Singer Dive Track. It's very obvious to me. So yeah, saving my pennies for the Singer Reimagined.
I have it right in front of me. I was looking at it earlier. It does say fly, chill, dive on it.
It does, yeah. Chill, dive, fly.
There's something about 100K with tax watch that just says chill on the dive.
Yeah, I'm just a chill dude.
It's kind of fun. That. Yeah, it also has like a big red button, or like it covers the button. It's just like it's a silly thing, but it's also like very, very technical. So I kind of like that dichotomy. The high and the low, as they say, mostly high though, because this is $100,000
very inventive.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk honorable mentions. What were some of the watches that you had, kind of like on your long list that didn't get mentioned? Devin, you already mentioned was the Glacier original that you
yeah. I mean, I bring that up a lot. I love that watch. I genuinely do. I think it's arguably probably the best watch or best dive watch for the price point.
Yeah.
The bubble sapphire crystal on the front and the back just completely encapsulate this romantic vision of a gorgeous movement and a gorgeously finished dial. Big date complication too. I'm a sucker for a big date. And we're going to get really nerdy here, but that bracelet, beautiful bracelet, But to remove the links, it has this awesome flathead push button system where you put the flathead in the back on the underside of the link, not on the side. So it's completely smooth on the side. On its underside, you push it in, you rotate it 90 degrees, and then you can just pull the links out. And it is a gorgeous system and just mechanically perfect. And I love that watch for just all of its nerdy little aspects that everyone else forgets about. But Glashütte Original is there to make sure that they really hammer it home. It's a very German watch.
Yeah. What else didn't quite make the cut for you? Was there anything that either of us picked that altered your decision making? Or I'm guessing.
Well, I went first, so no.
That's true. Yeah.
None of my picks were altered. I have a long list here. I talked about Tudor under 5K. The hard thing there is, like, again, that the Pelagos is pushed above 5K, which would have been my pick normally. But the Black Bay with a Metos movement at $4,700 on a Jubilee is pretty fantastic. Great value prop. The FXD in black specifically, still like one of the best bezels out there. Just like really aggressive on the teeth, but purposeful. Really cool one there in the 5 to 15K price point. JLC Polaris Date, just because of that dial. That dial is beautiful. Especially the green. The green is really cool. Looks like you're staring into an iris along the way. None of us mentioned Rolex with Submariner and a Deep Sea or Sea Dweller. Yeah, I
had the solid gold Sea Dweller. That was my other over. If Zach took the Singer, I was going to go solid gold Sea Dweller.
Interesting. That's a good pick, though. You could have gone ProPlof as well if you wanted those extra meters.
I would not have gone ProPlof. I with apologies to the ProPlof fans, I just can't. It doesn't wear well.
They're funky. No, they wear horribly. Yeah. It's like putting a stop sign on your wrist, but it's cool.
It's like, like they just look painful to me. And they don't feel great. So it's, I find them quite unappealing. Zach, what was on your long list? What were some of the watches that you did not?
So it's fine. I had Tudors in each category, and I just ended up not going with it. I think partially just because I feel like I put Tudor on every list and thing I do, because particularly under 5K, they offer a very distinct value. So, and originally the Black Bay, I didn't put the Black Bay 54 on here because, well, personally, that's actually like the sub 5K dive watch that I'm literally wearing and kind of does everything I want and is all like, I'm never diving, but should I need to wear a watch and jump in the water, I mean, I can with this one, right? But because of the gold and like accents and stuff, like I don't think of it, I'm thinking really about like, you want a dive watch for diving or something. Like I want it to be a little more tooly. So the 39, the Pelagos 39 is still under 5 at 48.75. And if that just had the matte dial and matte bezel, I probably would have one already. Just because that little change, it just sort of altered how it is in my eyes.
Yeah.
Also other ones in there. I mean, I already mentioned the Sin U50, U50 Hydro.
Yeah.
That's just an awesome watch. I've mentioned it, I think, every time I do anything. Like
so
that is
cool.
An infinite meter dive watch, and it's 2,800 in the version I liked a lot.
Fun thing about that, just want to give a quick shout out. My buddy Ben, Submersible Wrist, put out a story a while ago about a Navy diver who strapped a Casio FD, I think it was a FW91 or 91W, filled with oil to the outside of his submersible sub. And he had it on like the little appendage arm. And they took it down way further than that. And that thing was still running and working. So the oil fill, that's the secret right there. If the Casio can do it, Sin can do it, no problem.
Yeah, oil filled and quartz. It's like
so cool.
It's brilliant. And now they have the baffle back, which it gets rid of the bubble that used to be there.
Yeah.
Okay, super cool. 5 to 15. I just put this in here because it is silly. Vulcane Nautical Heritage.
Oh yeah.
They make that with the Cricket.
Yeah.
I feel like that was kind of a quiet launch, honestly, that they brought that back when they did. It's a cool looking watch. It's got a crazy compression dial system on it. You have to kind of mess with the settings to get it over 5K. And ironically, the steel case back, which is like what you'd have to get, that's what makes sense, actually puts it under 5K. So whatever. 17.35 millimeters thick, thanks to that acoustic case back though. So a real wearable watch. Also, and this is one I thought you were going to pick, Zach, but the Ming Bluefin Uni.
Yeah, I had the original bluefin on the on my list. I was gonna maybe try to sneak that into under 5K because it was 4,950 CHF. I couldn't find a current USD pricing for it. I also didn't search that hard, but yeah, no, that was on my. I had the bluefin on my list.
I had a lot of actually dual crown divers. I think.
Yeah,
that's something I have to. I don't have a dual crown diver in my collection. Maybe this is me telling myself. I was gonna maybe say the Black Bay 58 18 karat gold, just to troll for my over 15K choice, because that's $33,700.
Oh man, that's 33K.
Yeah,
wow,
it is a lot. But it's a solid gold, watch.
Yeah.
But okay, for real, I didn't think about these actually until we're talking because I just totally forgot about them. But the PETA reminded me of UTS.
Oh, sure.
Absurd German dive watch brand, all super deep divers. I feel like Adam Craniotis is like the only person I've ever known who has one. And but these things, like, they're as Germanic of a dive watch as you could possibly imagine, and like they're just beasts. But then a watch I once owned and I regularly miss and think about getting again is the Mule SAR, the original version.
That was I had one of those on my long list too. Yeah,
such a cool watch,
really cool,
very wearable, 1,000 meter. Nothing else looks like it. It doesn't have a bezel, but it's rad. It's a really rad watch.
Yeah. Basically everything on my long list has been mentioned. Thanks, Zach. I had multiple tutors in the Sinew 50, not a specific Sinew 50, just kind of like Sinew 50, under 5K, because there's a bunch of different options. I came really close to picking that gold Rolex Sea Dweller. Like that was.
It's a fun one. Why not?
Yeah, it's fun. I had to go Singer ultimately, but I like thinking about, because to your point earlier, Zach, I think it's exactly right. Like over 15K, over even a less amount than that, like it's silly for a dive watch. So you got to go with something like quite ridiculous. And like to me, a solid gold Sea Dweller is just like very, very ridiculous. So
it certainly.
Yeah,
it was the 5K for me is the line. Like when you really look at the bulk of dive watches, particularly because micro brands like all love to make dive watches too, are under 5K, but everything you need is there.
Yep.
And so it's really just you're getting into extras and, I think we were talking about the Gallet original bracelet's really cool. Like that to me speaks to a value that watch has, and part of why maybe it costs so much more than the Douglas Walbrook that looks almost the same kind of a thing, which is like $500, I mean, there's going to be a logical differences between the two, but but you could get that look, and you could get probably the meters and the glow, I don't know.
Cool. That was a fun exercise. I hope our listeners enjoyed it, and obviously are welcome to provide their own commentary, tell us what we got right and wrong, and what their picks would be. So much wrong. Yeah, so much wrong. Swatch will be in your inbox, Devin, though. So in full support. Yeah. I'm quite certain. In the time we have left, I ask you guys to think of some cultural recommendations. New feature on the podcast in our closing segment. I can go first if you guys want some time to think of a movie or a book or a podcast or whatever that you want to recommend. I've got a book this week. I bought a book on a recommendation from a friend of mine. I picked up Here by Richard McGuire. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this. This is basically a graphic novel. It was adapted by Robert Zemeckis into a movie at the end of last year starring Tom Hanks and Robin Wright, which I saw and was terrible. And I was having a conversation with a friend of mine about how much I hated this movie. And he was like, well, you should check out the book because it's very different from the movie. And he was right. The book is really quite beautiful. The conceit is that it tells all these different stories from the same perspective of this one room in a house. But it also covers the time before and after that house existed, and what happened in that space before and after. And the movie is really a kind of like a spiritual successor, both in the cast and the director, to Forrest Gump. It's really about the aging baby boomer generation, and I just find that It's incredibly boring, uninteresting at this moment in time. But that's not what the book is about at all. It tells a much more, it's a story of much larger scope. And the artwork is really beautiful. And it's just like a really nice thing to kind of like flip through. Really great visual storytelling. So if you saw the movie here and had the same reaction I did to it, that it was just awful, I encourage you to check out the book by Richard McGuire. It's quite beautiful. So that's my recommendation this week.
That was the movie with some aggressive de-aging in it, right?
Yeah, it had lots of very distracting CGI, de-aging. Clearly everything was shot like on a soundstage, but you're made to think that like they're in like a real house. Meanwhile, there's like clearly like computer generated imagery like outside a window. Like it's just I found it very annoying for a lot of reasons. One of the worst movies I've seen in a theater in a very long time.
Wow.
So yeah, no time on screen for that one coming up. Devin, you got anything? Got something to recommend?
I'll give you two. One I'm both I guess I'm late to the game on, but I just finished The Penguin finally on HBO Max. Super good. I'm not a big DC fan. I don't find that their modern storytelling is all that compelling. But The Penguin was really good. It was just a wild ride, kept you kind of on the edge for parts of it, but it was also somewhat predictable. So it was just enjoyable to keep on going. It towed that balance really nicely. The performances were pretty good for what they were. And so I really enjoyed that. And I finally finished that on a plane ride not too long ago. But I am currently also doing the audiobooks for all of the Slow Horses series.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And I think I'm on book 4 now. And they're fantastic. Just like really good, goofy espionage thrillers. The Audible narration is actually pretty good too. So if you are an Audible person, check it out. And actually, I think they might be free on Audible right now if you have a subscription. So download them and listen to them all.
Hard to beat free. It's the best price for just about everything.
Did you watch the show?
I did. Yes. Yeah. I watched the show. Really enjoyed the show.
Is it worth?
Great.
If you've watched the show, is it worth listening to? Are they different enough, or reading for them?
It's funny. I think this is the first time that watching something has enhanced my reading or listening experience because the character cast of the show is just so excellent that you don't mind picturing them in the book. Because I think sometimes like the disconnect between character description and actual actor portrayal is a big disconnect. But here, I put Gary Oldman in a book. I don't care. I love that. He's fantastic. So I think there's enough different in there that you'll enjoy it, but it's still very similar. But they're fun.
Cool.
Zach, what have you got?
So I'll go with a book as well. Actually, 2 books from the same series that I just read pretty quickly last month. So a couple of years ago, I read the 9-set series of The Expanse, which was a similar thing. I watched the show, loved the show. A few years later, wanted to read the books because I'd heard good things, and they were amazing. And the show enhanced it because the show could only do so much, especially since it wasn't like this massive budget show. So it really it gave you a taste, and then the books really opened it up, which was nice. But there's a new series that author James S.A. Corey just started. James S.A. Corey, actually, I believe, is 2 people, so it's kind of weird to refer to them. But they're 2 people, neither of which is James or Corey or anything like that. But they're just a tag team duo. So the first book is called The Mercy of Gods. And it's a new sci-fi opera kind of a thing, but wildly different from The Expanse. I ripped through that book super, super fast. It was just so entertaining. Easy read too, but crazy. And then I followed it up. They have like a 90-page novella that's like a second part of it that was a one evening read that was just super fun. So if you're into the sci-fi, if you liked Expanse or anything, I definitely recommend picking up his new stuff or their new stuff, because I also didn't know it existed. I was super excited when I just randomly came across that there was a new book by James S.A. Corey. So
yeah, that's a good recommendation. I've heard you recommend in multiple contexts the Expanse several times. I know you're a big fan of those books. I've seen the television show, but I haven't dived into the books yet, but maybe I'll finally get around to that. I do love a good like sci-fi series. So.
They're a lot of fun, and they're not like challenging, like in any way. Like the pace is fast. There's a lot to grab. Like I don't know. I like something like I read the the 3-body problem, the first book, and then the second book gets so dense so fast. It was kind of like and like I stopped, and I've stopped too long to kind of go back and not start it over again. It's not like that.
Show. Yeah, the show.
The show was fun.
The show,
I actually like the show.
I did too, but I don't think it's ever coming back.
It got renewed.
Did it actually?
For like one season or something?
I think 2. I think they got.
I hope. I've been waiting to 2 for
seasons. Yeah. Okay. Which I'm excited for. I thought, the books are quite an achievement. They get very dense and difficult. The tone of the show was very surprising to me, but I enjoyed it quite a bit. So, great, thanks guys. Good recommendations all around. Good episode all around. I think we covered a lot of Dive Watch ground today for sure. So, thank you both for joining me on the podcast, and thank you to our listeners as always for listening week in and week out. We will be back next week with another new episode of the Warner Wild podcast. Until then, take care.